Hezbollah in Lebanon may have just committed suicide. That's right. They decided to join the war. We were talking about this in lead up to the war and in the first day of the war. That Hezbollah and the other Iranian proxies were threatening that they would join the war and they would carry out all kinds of attacks. And I was predicting that they wouldn't do anything. But Hezbollah the other day decided to, and I don't think it's going to work out for them. But let's go through what is happening in Lebanon. Okay, so here we are. Hezbollah says it joined war over 15 months of Israeli aggression. Statement came hours after Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam declared that the terror group would be barred from conducting military operations from Lebanese territory. So that's the really interesting part of the story, is what's happening internally in Lebanon. Hezbollah said early Tuesday, that's yesterday, that it had joined the war against Israel in response to what it described as prolonged Israeli aggression against Lebanon, hours after Lebanon's prime minister announced a ban on the group's military activity from the country's territory. In a statement issued overnight, Hezbollah said that for 15 months, the aggression against Lebanon continued. You notice he always says aggression against Lebanon. The aggression is always only against Hezbollah, but he wants to paint it. Hezbollah always wants to paint themselves as the protectors of Lebanon. So the aggression against Lebanon continued, including killing and destruction, and that it repeatedly warned that such actions cannot continue. So now they're saying that the reason that they're firing missiles at Israel now has nothing to do with Iran, but it's because of the aggression against Lebanon. Okay. It is not possible to justify prolonged aggression with excuses, Hezbollah said. Confrontation is a legitimate right, and what the Islamic resistance did was a response to aggression. No word about Iran or anything to do with Iran coming out of Hezbollah. Okay, the statement came hours after Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam declared that they'd be barred from conducting military operations. Lebanese Justice Minister Adel Nasser told Al Jazeera that the decision was published despite objections from ministers affiliated with Hezbollah, who did not leave the cabinet meeting. Ministers from the Shiite Amal movement voted in favor of the decision, he said. Hezbollah's move to launch rockets towards Israel is a grave mistake. And endangers the people. The Lebanese government emphasized that any military activity by Hezbollah no longer receives any type of cover. Okay, so they announced that it has nothing to do with Iran, even though everyone knows that that's the reason that they attacked Israel. And they, of course, invited Israeli attacks on them. And, regarding this barring of Hezbollah, this decision, it's very important to understand the internal dynamics of what's going on in Lebanon. So Nawaf Salam is very much a moderate who, if he was really fully in charge, even though he's the prime minister, he's not really fully in charge, because you have Hezbollah as part of the government. And the big issue is that Hezbollah's military force, even with everything Israel's done to it, is still stronger than the Lebanese army, because for decades, they were really the only strong military force there. And that's why the commitments made by the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah by the end of 2025 were never fulfilled. But now they're getting a little bit stronger, at least in the things they're saying. The decision regarding a state of war or peace lies solely with the government. We reject any military or security action carried out from Lebanese territory outside the framework of legitimate state institutions. Seems like a pretty basic thing to say. Salam said Hezbollah's activity from now on must be confined to the political sphere, and reiterated that the terror group is obligated to hand over its weapons. Okay? He also instructed security forces to prevent any attacks from Lebanese territory and to immediately implement the decision to concentrate weapons north of the Litani River. Okay, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun is a president and a prime minister. He echoed the prime minister's position, saying, quote, "Whoever launched the rockets will bear the consequences of his actions." Now, the Lebanese president also led a meeting of the Council of Ministers yesterday, and this meeting led to a decision declaring all Hezbollah military operations illegal in Lebanon. The decision taken by the Council of Ministers yesterday, preserving the Lebanese state's sole right to control decisions of war and peace and banning military and security activities outside the law, is a sovereign and final decision from which there is no turning back. Aoun told the Quintet Committee, made up of representatives of the United States, France, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Egypt. According to the MTV Lebanese news site, the Council of Ministers has entrusted the army and security forces with implementing the decision across all Lebanese regions. So what this is, some of it is bluster, where they're saying, we're now finally going to take away Hezbollah's weapons. They're now illegal. But really what you're seeing is a change in tone, that the Lebanese government, the prime minister, the president, are fed up with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is drawing fire from Israel for attacking Israel in defense of Iran. And while Hezbollah is saying we're defending Lebanon, the prime minister and the president are correctly saying, hello, the only sovereign who can decide whether or not to go to war is us. So this might seem like obvious points to make, but understand that Hezbollah for decades has kind of been occupying. It's really, look at it this way. Lebanon has been occupied territory, occupied by the Iranian regime, because Hezbollah is technically a political party and a militia in Lebanon, but they're really an arm of the Iranians. They're much more than a proxy. Hamas and the Houthis got funding from Iran, or maybe still do. I don't know what the situation is now with Iran under attack, but they're funded by, so they are kind of proxies, meaning that the Iranian regime does not own Hamas or the Houthis, but they own Hezbollah, right? When Hassan Nasrallah was eliminated by Israel, his successor, Naim Qassem, was chosen in Tehran, okay? It's actually an arm of the Iranian government. So Hezbollah's control over Lebanon and using it as a base of operation and becoming the de facto military there has really been an Iranian occupation of Lebanon. And since Israel started hitting Hezbollah earlier in the war after October 7th and degrading Hezbollah's capabilities and weakening them politically and knocking out Nasrallah, the Lebanese government has been trying to seize control back from Hezbollah over its own government. And this Hezbollah attack on Israel in this war just now, and these reactions you're seeing, is an escalation in the attempt to bring Hezbollah to heel. Meanwhile, on the Israeli side of things, IDF expands southern Lebanon position, but no big invasion until Iran's situation is calmer, okay? The IDF on Tuesday announced that it has slightly expanded its security zone in South Lebanon, adding to the 5 positions that it has held there since the November 2024 ceasefire. However, the IDF Northern Command said that it was unlikely to initiate a larger ground invasion into Lebanon until the situation with Iran was calmer, if at all. Okay. In other words, we're threatening, but we're not necessarily going to go full force into there. What's more, the IDF said that Hezbollah will be substantially harmed by losing access to Iranian funds, which were almost its sole source of support since the war started, and that the terror group has angered its own constituency, who have not yet received reparations for their losses from the 2023-2024 conflict with Israel. Okay, so the people there are getting annoyed, and the Israelis are saying, well, we're expanding, but we're not going full force yet. But then we have this statement from Defense Minister Israel Katz. Defense Minister Israel Katz says Hezbollah Secretary General Naim Qassem is now a target after the terror group fired rockets and drones at Israel. Quote, the Hezbollah terror organization will pay a heavy price for the firing toward Israel, and Naim Qassem, Hezbollah's Secretary General, who decided on firing under pressure from Iran, from now on, he is a marked target for elimination. That's what Katz wrote on X. He said that whoever follows the path of Iran's former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, who was killed by Israel on Saturday, will soon find himself together with him in the depths of hell with all those eliminated from the axis of evil. And then the IDF chief, Eyal Zamir, the chief of staff of the IDF, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, said that the military insists that Hezbollah be disarmed and will not end its new offensive against the terror group until the threat is removed. Our main effort is Iran. We are operating with force and striking the terror regime in unprecedented cooperation with the United States. Very nice. After Hezbollah opened fire, I instructed that we act forcefully against Hezbollah as well. The IDF planned and is prepared to operate in multiple arenas simultaneously. The Lebanese government and the Lebanese army have recently been warned many times to disarm Hezbollah. They did not act. We will end the campaign not only with Iran harmed, but with Hezbollah also sustaining a very severe blow. Okay, and then what we saw earlier today, is that Iran and Hezbollah launched a simultaneous missile barrage on Israel, again, trying to be more effective by coming from different directions and making it simultaneous and having a large quantity of missiles hitting Israel at the same time. Missiles from Iran and rockets from Lebanon fired at the same time towards central Israel and northern Israel set off widespread sirens as air defenses intercepted the projectiles. No injuries were reported. Okay. So, yeah, that is that. Okay, so you see that they're working in tandem there. In a separate development, look at this. Turkey's defense ministry said NATO air defense systems in the eastern Mediterranean intercepted an Iranian ballistic missile headed towards Turkish territory. According to the ministry, missile debris was located in southern Turkey, not far from the Syrian border. No injuries were reported. Now, I don't know what to make of this because Turkey has really been Iran's best friend. I don't know if this is just signaling that, Turkey is not on the Iranian side because it's just that it was in the eastern Mediterranean and some debris fell in Turkish territory. Don't take this to mean that Iran fired at Turkey. Okay, we'll watch that story. But here's a very interesting take. This is from the Institute for National Security Studies. It's a very important think tank in Israel. And what you have here is a little piece of analysis from earlier today, analyzing the cracks in the partnership between Hezbollah and the other Shiite political party in Lebanon, Amal. So let me give you a little bit of background. Amal is a Shiite political party, but they are not Hezbollah. Hezbollah, of course, are also Shiites. So over the decades, Amal has been kind of cooperating with Hezbollah. They've gone along with them and voted along with them and almost been seen like one bloc, the Shiite bloc. The supporters of Amal and the supporters of Hezbollah have a lot of overlap between them. But look at this report. Very interesting. Hezbollah's decision to open fire on Israel and drag Lebanon into the cycle of fighting has created a rift between it and its longtime partner, Amal. Okay? And it talks about how there's been relative silence from the leadership of Amal, but the central indicator of strained relations between the two movements was the participation of Amal's ministers in the decision by the Lebanese government, which we just talked about, which made Hezbollah's military and security activity illegal. Okay? Amal's ministers voted with the government to make Hezbollah military activity illegal. That's huge in Lebanese politics because it means that the Shiite community is splitting or really largely moving away from support for Hezbollah. He goes on, the gaps between the two Shiite movements, considered sister organizations that have operated in close cooperation for years, aren't new. Although Amal is more moderate, it has been drawn by its more radical sister into extreme steps in the past. However, for Nabi Berri, the head of Amal, the opening of a war under the current circumstances appears to have been excessive, given its destructive implications for Lebanon. Now, here's the most interesting part of this for me. Criticisms of Hezbollah's actions within the Shiite community isn't confined to leadership circles, but is filtering down to broader components, including former Hezbollah supporters. On social media, critical messages have been shared by Shiite displaced persons who were forced to leave their villages in southern Lebanon for the second time in 2 years without having yet received compensation for the first displacement during the original war between Israel and Hezbollah in 23-24. In other words, Hezbollah pledged to give compensation to those who were displaced or had their homes damaged in the war with Israel, but they haven't. Of course, they don't have any money, or whatever money they have, they just spend on weapons. Particularly notable is a statement recently published by the Union of Tribes and Families in the Baalbek Hermel region, an organization representing Shiites closely associated with Hezbollah, praising the government's decision that Hezbollah's security activity is illegal. It's still too early to assess the extent of the rift between the two Shiite movements and the implications of the criticism of Hezbollah from within the Shiite population. However, it's conceivable that the erosion of Hezbollah's standing could be reflected in the results of parliamentary elections, which are scheduled to take place this year, despite repeated attempts to postpone them. Aha. In other words, the parliamentary cooperation that we are used to seeing, that we've seen for decades between Amal and Hezbollah, these two parties in the government that are both Shiites, looks like it is falling apart. So now it's not only that the prime minister and the president, who aren't from Shiite parties, but are the president and the prime minister, are leading this charge to declare Hezbollah's military activity illegal and to marginalize them and ramping up the rhetoric about disarming them, even though they haven't done that yet. Remember, the Lebanese army is not as strong as Hezbollah. But all of this pressure coming from the non-Shiite parts of the government, that is kind of expected, even though it's ramping up. But now we also have them losing their main allies in the parliament, their main allies politically, Amal. And we have an election coming up. So this could play out in a very interesting way in the elections in Lebanon. So they're getting it from all sides. They're being declared illegal. Everyone's against them. They're losing Shiite support. And meanwhile, the Iranian regime is crumbling. This could be the end for Hezbollah. And then just to top it off, Lebanese pop star Elissa, one of the Middle East's most successful artists, has called Hezbollah a terror organization. That might not seem like a big deal, but again, this is much more bold and blunt than what you would usually have seen out of a Lebanese celebrity. Okay, and just for good measure to end off this video, while we're checking in on proxies, the Houthis, who said the other day that they were going to start disrupting shipping again, have not yet done so, and they have not yet joined the war for now. And we'll talk more about them in a subsequent video. Okay, there's our update on what's going on with Hezbollah. We could be seeing the end of them once and for all. And it would be kind of their own doing. So with everything else that is being accomplished in this war, the end of Hezbollah would be a welcome development. All right, folks, that's it for this. Please keep watching, keep sharing, keep helping grow the channel. Thank you so much. It's amazing how quickly the channel has grown. It really shows me that there are people out there who are appreciating these updates, and I will continue to keep you updated on all the developments in the Iran war. And please keep checking out all the great content we're putting up at Israel 365. We just uploaded a new video there that's all about the implications for the U.S.-China relationship from the war with Iran. God bless.